Harry's Wife, Part 100.9. The Cut. Her narcissism is rampant. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I know many of you have had the misfortune to read Harry's wife's interview in The Cut, though as we all know, there appears to have been an N missing from that title. This is an interview, although, of course, it's really a PR promotion, all about the self-congratulatory behaviour of Harry's wife, and is rampant with examples of her narcissism. The interview appeared just recently in the Cut magazine. I'm not going to read it word for word. Firstly, one wonders whether the microphone into which my beautiful voice speaks might possibly melt under the onslaught of such nauseating and sickening self-absorbed behaviour that Harry's wife engages in. And it's a lovely microphone that I have. Furthermore, you're more than capable of reading it for yourselves, and therefore what I propose to do is summarise the sections and then take you towards particular parts, which I will then extract, reading those parts in full so you have accurate context, and then explaining my own observations with regard to what's really going on, and of course providing you with the examples of her narcissism in action. First of all, I think it's worthwhile that we start with the picture that adorns. We have Harry's wife with minimal makeup staring out at you. If you have any young children that won't go to bed on time, won't eat up their broccoli, won't, for instance, stop watching Peppa Pig, or whatever it is that entertains children these days, if you have a young child that won't stop going la 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 la, or you want to perhaps assist your child in toilet training by coercing them towards their potty, then what I would recommend that you do is that you blow up this picture of Harry's wife, cut it out and affix it to a stick, and then put it in place of your own face, and it will terrify any toddler or young child into instant compliance and submission. You might, of course, get a visitation from Child Protection Services, nothing to do with me. You take it on your own account. Social services might come knocking on the basis of child cruelty. But it seems to me that such a terrifying picture is one that would be apt to be utilised in such a way. The picture, of course, exemplifies those dead eyes of her, the dead eyes of the narcissist staring out. She attempts to conjure up an air of sophistication, of seriousness, as if to say, this interview is extremely important and you must listen to me. Of course, the only importance that she has is self-importance. Here we see her morphing into Wallace Simpson all the more with this type of hairstyle, and of course she's channeling the spirit of Steve Jobs, narcissist, and Elizabeth Holmes, narcissist, with the old black turtleneck, roll neck sweater that she's wearing, because apparently if you wear that, that means that you're super successful and serious and worth taking note of. So even with the cover, we're treated to mirroring, self-absorption, and the narcissist's stare, the dead eyes. We're off the mark already. But let's dive into the interview and find out some more. The interview, of course, took place at the Monty Shit Show mansion, the place where Harry's wife, who apparently empathises with the world and understands everybody's hardship as they battle ever-increasing energy bills, ever-increasing food prices, ever-increasing transportation costs, but she understands all of that, living in the multi-roomed Monty Shit Show mansion with the 27,000 flushing toilets. And it's from there, her seat of indulgence, that the interview takes place. And it takes place in a beautiful sitting room by all account, and Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor is there also. The first extract that I'm going to read from the interview is as follows. Harry's wife, relaxing in a cosy chair, gazes over all that is climate-controlled and high-ceilinged and sun-dappled and perfectly marshmallowy. Well, I think the use of marshmallowy is apt. Bland, tasting of very little, sponge-like, and rather sticks in your mouth. That's a very good description of Harry's wife. An invisible hand has lit a Soho House branded rosewater candle. The founder, Nick Jones, is a friend from long before I met Harry, she says. Triangulation with object. Grandiosity, of course, because Harry's wife doesn't light candles. Either some minion does it, or it might just be as a consequence of the ignited fury pouring hatred from her eyes that the wick of the candle immediately ignites. And that scent fills the air, mingling with the gentle tones of a flamenco-inflected guitar floating from a speaker. Then, in the lull in conversation, Harry's wife turns to me and leans forward to ask in a conspiratorial hush, "Do you want to know a secret?" Harry's wife, silenced no more, looks around, making sure nobody, who would be, is listening in. Then, the top secret drop, "I'm getting back on Instagram," she says, her eyes alight and devilish. Here, of course, the interviewer is being triangulated with her lush surrounds. Why doesn't she be interviewed from somewhere austere? Somewhere that is not about the environment, but it would be about her. The fact is, Harry's wife needs these props. She's industrial beige, and therefore she needs to be seen with the trappings of her success. And some of you may think, well, why not be interviewed in your home? But if she was more authentic, a word that she loves to bandy around, it would be far more effective for her to say, "Look, here I am in sackcloth and ashes, and you're interviewing me inside a large cardboard box." Then you could focus on what she has to say, rather than where she is and what she's showing around you. Of course, she invites the interviewer to know a secret. This is quite common for a narcissist to assert control over the relevant victim by inviting them into the narcissist's supposed secret world, to make them a confidant, to make them feel special because they're being given privy to some information. Big whoopie fucking do. Harry's wife is on social media. Shit the bed. It's like nobody else has ever been on social media ever in the history of ever, has it? It's not like there are billions of people that use social media. Oh no, Harry's wife is going to be back on social media, on Instagram. Wring it out from the churches, stop the presses, let everybody know. Self-absorption, grandiosity, use of secrecy, and confidant to assert control. I would invite you to watch my video, The Narcissist's Use of Secrecy, and able to understand why and how narcissists use this. But here, Harry's wife, as she always is when she's interacting with another human being, is engaging in her instinctive manipulations. Of course, reference is made to her not being silenced, bringing up the past, smearing of the royal family, and then there is a paranoia, looking around as if being listened on. Part of that's hamming it up in order, her narcissism making her seem more important. But it is also driven by the paranoia that rests beneath everything that she does. And then, of course, the top secret drop, as the interviewer fawningly describes, that she's getting back on Instagram. Hardly an earth-shattering revelation, but also, of course, is demonstrative of the narcissist's need to assert control through social media, which is what many narcissists do. Continuing on, the article then talks a bit about what she's been doing in terms of how she ran the TIG and what that involved and so forth. She brings up the past again by making reference to the apparent loss of her passport and the freedom to open her own mail, failing, of course, to take into account the other sides of that she had a staff running around after her. And whilst it continues in the vein of what was going on with regard to social media, let's dip into another extract. Harry's wife was permitted to join Harry, Kate and Will on a pre-existing account at Kensington Royal that she had no control over. You see, what Harry's wife fails to understand is that she was joining an institution which has its own procedures for very good reason. You might not agree with them. You might not think they're particularly good, but they belong to that institution. It's a little bit like when you go in a shop. That's a private place, and you have to abide by the rules and terms of that shop. If you don't like them, go and shop somewhere else. And the owner of that shop, so long as they're not contravening any legislation with regard to discrimination, is perfectly entitled to say, I don't want you in my store any longer. Harry's wife can't acknowledge that. She can't acknowledge that she was joining an institution and it was a term and condition of the institution that this is the way that things are done. You either go along with it or you don't. But if you don't, that's going to pose a problem. She, driven by her narcissism and her sense of entitlement and the need to assert control, causes her, of course, to try and tell that institution how it should do things. And the fact that she felt that she had no control over the output from this social media account, of course, is redolent of her narcissism, as it amounts to a threat to control. The extract continues. There's literally a structure by which if you want to release photos of your child as a member of the royal family, you first have to give them to the royal rota, the UK media pool, she explains. Usually the photos would be on media outlets before she could post them herself. That didn't sit right with Harry's wife, given her strained relationship with the British tabloids. Why would I give the very people that are calling my children the N-word a photo of my child before I can share it with the people that love my child? Well, on the face of it, that does appear to be a legitimate inquiry. But again, that's the way that it goes when you join this institution. And it was made clear to you. But of course, that offends your sense of control, Harry's wife, and therefore you fought against it. But what you're doing here is bringing up the past, referring to the way that the media was controlled, using it as a pity play, and using it to control the now with regard to this interviewer and the people that are reading the interview. A further extract states, in April 2019, 1 month before Archie was born, Harry's wife and Harry launched their own Instagram handle at Sussex Royal, which reached 1 million followers within 6 hours. Assertion of control by showing a sense of entitlement, doing own thing. On their own account, they refused to play the exchange game. They broke their own news, posting photos that sometimes never even made it to the royal rota. Shortly after, they officially stepped back from their royal duties. They shut down at Sussex Royal. They could no longer use royal in their branding. Later, in an interview with Fortune, Harry's wife declared that she wasn't planning on getting back on social media. The constant bullying had been too much. So this divulgence, in addition to being newsworthy, is a symbol of progress, proof that she and Harry have made it to the other side of all of the drama that defined their past 3 years. Well, who created all of this drama? She did. She did so based on her behaviour, but of course her narcissism will not allow her to see it. It was everybody else's fault. They were bullying her, although of course she omits to mention her bullying of a 3-year-old child. She fails to realise that what she labels as bullying was simple criticism of her behaviours, but through her narcissistic lens, any time you criticise her, you're a racist, you're a bully, you're a hater, you're a misogynist. And certain individuals take up the cudgels on her behalf, repeating those mantras, which are wholly without foundation. Anybody with functioning brain cells is able to see that the criticisms relate to her behaviour, not the colour of her skin, not her gender, but how she behaves herself. Of course, making mention of it here demonstrates the assertion of control through a sense of entitlement with their own account and utilising a pity play by bringing up the past. The conversation then moves on to archetypes, which of course she needs to push in order to ensure that people know about it and actually listen to it, although those who have a genuine interest in it are few and far between. In this, she states, from an extract, each episode features her in conversation with her famous friends. They're not really her friends, she doesn't have any, discussing the ways women are unfairly labelled and experienced. Harry's wife notes she has been through herself and is finally ready to talk about. Once again, it's all about her. It's nothing to do with these supposed famous friends. Instead, what it's all about is talk about her struggle, how difficult it has been for her, and that she is finally ready to talk about it. The other people are just there for the purpose of triangulation. So as we heard with Serena Williams experienced a difficulty with regard to her daughter falling out of a high chair. Immediately along came Harry's wife and her trumping one-upmanship. Oh, we had a disaster. Archie nearly burned to death. So my tragedy is more of a tragedy than yours, because after all, this is about me. You're just here as to be a stooge, in effect, to what I want to talk about. You are playing Horatio to Hamlet. Horatio was just there as a sounding board for Hamlet when he would engage in his soliloquies and so forth. It's the same with Harry's wife. Her narcissism wants it to be always about her, and therefore anything that the interviewee might actually get in, being given minimal opportunity to talk, of course ends up being commandeered by Harry's wife and bettered, triangulated with one-upmanship. We then get a rather strange part of this interview, where the extract explains as follows. Though she has been media trained, and then royal media trained, and sometimes converses like she has a tiny bachelor producer in her brain directing what she says, now, in effect that's the narcissism, although she doesn't know it. At one point in our conversation, instead of answering a question, she will suggest how I might transcribe the noises she's making. She's making these guttural sounds, and I can't quite articulate what it is she's feeling in that moment because she has no word for it. She's just moaning. Have you ever heard such nonsense? For once, probably because she's been listening to my videos, she understands what guttural really means. Where she talked about a guttural reaction when she meant visceral. Guttural, of course, is a throaty sound that's being made, a guttural growling. But with Harry's wife, she has the grandiosity and, in a sense, the batshit craziness to actually say to the interviewer, this is what you need to transcribe. You need to write down that I'm making guttural sounds, and that you need to write down that you can't quite articulate what I'm feeling at that moment because there's no word for it, that she's just moaning. Not only does this show a horrendous absence of boundary recognition, a sense of entitlement that's rampant, and a lack of accountability for her conduct and behaviours, it shows an absence of emotional empathy for the interviewer because she's basically telling her what she should do. But this is Harry's wife all over. She is the director of her own movie. You can well imagine that when Harry's wife goes to the bathroom, there is a soundtrack playing in her mind of some kind of immense, dramatic soundtrack. She escaped the royal family. She made her way to California. And now, she's going to take a shit on one of the 27,000 flushing toilets. She is Harry's wife, dumper of turds. I kid you not. There is a soundtrack in her head to everything that she does. She is essentially viewing herself from third party, describing she does this, she does that. She thinks that everybody has to understand and notice what she is doing. That is how rampant her narcissism is. So this is the opening part of the cut, but plenty more for us to get our teeth into. Join me in the next section. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.